Hey, this is Larken Rose. I was going to title this video, Why There Is Hope. And it actually does end with some very positive, hopeful stuff. But first I have to offend and insult a lot of people. And to make it worse, the people I will be offending and insulting are very good people with very good intentions who are working very hard at what they believe in. So I'm sure this is going to win me tons of friends. And there's somebody out there, and it's your fault I'm doing this video today, and you know who you are. To get right to the point, most activism is completely worthless. In fact, it's worse than completely worthless. It accomplishes more harm than good. Now again, I want to distinguish between good intentions and good results, because there are lots and lots of things that fall within the realm of activism. And I'm not saying all activism, but most of it actually does less than no good. And while I'm at it, I'll say I speak from experience. Many years ago, when I still believed in statism, I was politically active, and I campaigned, and I played those games, and I wrote to my congressman and did all that stuff. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it now, but yeah, I did that too. And at the time, I really and truly believed that I was fighting the right fight. I was fighting against the beast. It only occurred to me many years later that actually I was feeding the beast lots and lots of fuel. So I don't make this video to be nasty at people. I do it because I don't want people's good intentions to be wasted on something that does less than no good. And I kind of wish back then somebody had straightened me out. Don't know whether I would have listened, but I wish somebody would have tried to straighten me out and say, yeah, all that voting and petitioning and all that fun stuff doesn't actually accomplish anything. And if you look throughout history at the people who have protested and had demonstrations and voted and ran for office and did petitions for this or that legislation or against this or that legislation, and if you look what they've accomplished, it's almost nothing. And very rarely there are actually exceptions, but for the most part, it's nothing. The people in power kept doing what they were doing, and the people protesting and petitioning and whining about it spent just huge amounts of time and effort and money and accomplished pretty much nothing. And let me just throw this in. I seriously want to ask activists, people who consider themselves activists, do you think there's the slightest prayer in the world of you actually winning the game that you're playing? Because if you look at standard basic activism, I mean, take the example of protesting wars. People go out, you know, hundreds, thousands, maybe millions go out and protest in the streets. We don't like this war. We think it's horrible and nasty. How long have people been doing that? How long have people been protesting that? Pretty much forever. And is there still perpetual warmongering going on? Yeah. Are innocent people still dying? Yeah. Are innocent civilians on the other side of the world being killed by U.S. troops? Yeah. Is it going to keep happening if people protest? Yep. So how many activists actually think that, well, if we have one more protest, suddenly the people in power are going to go, oh, you're right, sorry about that, we're bringing all the troops home. If you don't really think you're, first of all, if you do think you're going to win, if you think you're one protest away from making the control freaks wise up and be good and noble people, you're not. And if you don't think that, if you think it's going to continue the way it's gone for the last forever, which is you complain and completely righteously, you make these heartfelt objections, and it just keeps right on going. The war machine keeps grinding along, keeps grinding up innocent lives. If you don't think you're going to win, why do you keep doing it? Now, speaking for myself, back when I was politically active, I didn't think there was another choice. That was the only fight I could fathom, is try to get somebody different in office or call your congressman and protest. That's all I knew that there was. And that is key. Because if the people in power can convince you that your only recourse, the only civilized approach for you to take, is begging and petitioning and whining, you're doomed. If that's all that's inside your narrow view of what you can accomplish in the world, you don't accomplish anything. The slave masters are thrilled to death. You throw away all your time, all your effort, all your money into something that will accomplish exactly nothing. And I'm not saying this to make people feel bad. Again, I want people's good intentions to accomplish something. And most activism does not accomplish anything. Well, it doesn't accomplish anything positive. It actually accomplishes things in the other direction. Like I said, back when I did it, I didn't realize I was actually feeding the beast that I was trying to defeat. See, the problem with most activists is that they don't actually know what the problem is. The problem is they don't know what the problem is. As Thoreau put it, there are 1,000 people hacking at the branches of evil to one striking at its root. And that's totally true, and you can see it throughout the world and throughout history. We see symptoms of the problem all over the place, and there's more examples of that than anyone could possibly count. Whether it's a war, or like what they're doing to Bradley Manning, what they're doing to Snowden, the war on drugs, the warrantless searches, all the symptoms of the problem, and there's an endless list of symptoms of the problem that are totally worth getting angry about and saying, this is horrible, we have to do something about this. Trouble is, most activists don't actually recognize the cause. They see the symptoms and say, look at this horrible symptom. And if you don't know the cause, you don't know how to stop the symptom. I mean, if we had a big protest and rah, they let Bradley Manning go, do you think, first of all, do you think that's going to happen? Second of all, if it did, do you think government from now on would say, yeah, when people point out that we're evil, murderous psychos, let's just let it slide, That's not going to happen. No amount of protests and votes and petitions are going to make that happen. And I hope even the activists are honest enough to admit that that is not ever going to happen. So, if you're treating the symptom because you don't know what the cause is, that doesn't do any good. And if you're actually reinforcing the cause, that's worse than no good. And I'm here to say most political activists are reinforcing the problem while they holler and scream at the symptoms. And they'll go out there and say, well, we need to raise awareness. Okay, is anybody not aware that government does evil stuff? Pretty sure everybody kind of gets that. Getting the details out there and getting information out there, I like that. That's good. That's worthwhile. So good. Now we have a lot of people that knows that the government's evil and vicious and violent and murderous. And it still is. Like, you raise awareness, and then what? People are aware of it, okay? In some ways, maybe it would be better if they weren't. At least they could be happier while living as slaves. If the goal is to raise awareness and then nothing, that doesn't accomplish anything. And a thing I hear all the time, which, these people have really good intentions, and I hate to burst their bubble, but people say, this is our last chance to save the Republic. First of all, no. The Republic was doomed from the second the Constitution was written. Absolutely doomed. It was an authoritarian ruling class, theoretically limited. It was doomed to be here. And if you read what the Anti-Federalists wrote, they knew it. They predicted perfectly. They actually underestimated how drastically it would collapse into tyranny. But they knew it. The Republic was doomed the moment it began. But people talk as if this is our last chance. If we can just pass this thing or get the right person in office, we can save the Republic. One, no we can't. Two, no we shouldn't. Hell with the Republic. Let it crash, let it burn. It should not exist. A republic is a ruling class. It is a parasitic gang of thugs and thieves. That's all the Republic is. And I know there are lots of people who still adore the Constitution and think there's something magical and righteous about a republic. It's just a slightly different arrangement of how to be an evil, control freak, parasitic, immoral monster. It doesn't really make any difference. And if you don't believe me, if you want a few references to republics in history, democratic republics, representative democratic republics, try People's Republic of China, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, meaning North Korea, the Weimar Republic, out of which the Nazi Empire grew. Does it seem like republics lead to happiness and peace and justice? So no, don't try to restore a republic. You're trying to restore the problem. Don't try to restore the problem. That doesn't freaking help. And again, this gets back to the fact that the activists don't understand what the problem is. They don't understand that authoritarianism is the problem. The problem is not and has never been who is on the throne. The problem is and has always been and will always be until people wake up that there is a throne there to be on. And as long as the argument is what government should do who should run it, what form it should take. You're just tinkering with the details and completely ignoring the heart of the problem, which is the belief in government and authoritarianism. So any activism that doesn't hit at that belief, that doesn't strike at that root, is worse than worthless. Not only does it treat symptoms that aren't going to change anyway, but it actually reinforces in the minds of all the listeners and viewers that that heart cannot be touched. That of course we need government. You know, I hear people, it's funny, I am anti-government. I'm 100% anti-government because government is inherently immoral and evil and destructive. The belief in it is the complete antithesis of humanity. So I'm completely anti-government. And I find it funny that other groups get accused of that who aren't. They just want a slightly different flavor of authoritarian ruling class. But those groups will then say, oh, we're not anti-government. We just want the right kind of, and I just think, oh, okay, so you're not pro-freedom. You're not pro-morality. You have no idea what the problem is and therefore no ability to fix it. And a lot of people say, well, we have common goals and we have a common enemy, so can't we just sort of ignore the little details of disagreement? This is not a detail of the disagreement. This is the only issue that matters. Do you own yourself, or are you the property of a ruling class? I don't care if it's a limited ruling class. I don't care if it's a democratic ruling class. I don't care if it's a Republican ruling class. I don't care if it's a constitutional ruling class. If there's some beast that has the right to take your money and boss you around, it owns you. You're not free, you don't own yourself. And if you actually believe that, why do you ever imagine you will achieve freedom? You're not even free inside your own head. And so when people say, well, these little differences, this is not a little difference. Either you think there can be someone with the right to rule you, or you understand that there can be no such thing. Or you understand the concepts of self-ownership and the non-aggression principle and what those logically lead to, which is legitimate government is a logical impossibility. It cannot exist. Not just it's really hard to maintain, it's theoretically and conceptually insane to think there can be a moral and righteous gang of thugs and thieves who bosses people around and takes their money. It just doesn't work philosophically or morally or logically. So to all those activists out there who are hacking at the symptoms, I feel your pain, but it isn't doing any good. If you don't even understand what the core problem is, you will do what protesters and activists around the world for hundreds of years have done, which is nothing. Bash your head against a brick wall, scream and holler, and accomplish nothing. Okay, now, like I said, I was going to call this Why There Is Hope. So far, we haven't heard a lot of hope in this video yet. Here's why there is hope. There are a lot of people now who are coming to see the actual problem, who are recognizing the source of all those little symptoms you see. The warmongering and the fascist police stops and the war on drugs and the detaining people and just all the little symptoms that people can point to and say, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, police abuse, everything else. There are a lot of people, thousands and thousands, who are coming to recognize the underlying cause, the real problem, which is the belief in government and authority. If you don't fix that, you don't fix anything. If all you can do is bicker over what you hope the masters will tell you, or who your masters will be, you're just doomed. But there are a lot of people all the way waking up to the problem. And a lot of these people tell me, you know, I am kind of ashamed that I wasted so much time and effort on activism before. And that's true of me too. Like I said before, I did lots of activism and now I look back and think, why on earth was I so gullible that I thought that was the thing to do about it? And it's only because I didn't recognize the problem. I could see nasty symptoms, I wanted them to stop, but I didn't take the time to actually understand the real cause, which is the cult of statism. But the good news is that there are lots and lots and lots of people who are all the way waking up to the fundamental problem. And I'm often tempted, because I get emails just about every other day from somebody telling me, wow, for years and years I was a constitutionalist, or some of them were even like socialists or Democrats, Republicans, whatever they were, who say, wow, I finally understand now how inherently bogus and immoral the entire game of politics is. And just to brag a bit, a lot of people send me these messages after reading my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. Say, holy smokes, well, I mean, I knew that so many people tell me, I sort of knew this. It's like this was already in my head, but it wasn't quite clear. And I say, I know, that's who I wrote it for, because I went through the process myself of slowly escaping statism. And when you get to the realization of you know, the concept of self-ownership, you look back and think, how on earth did I ever not know this? And you feel like somewhere inside I had to know this. It's so dang obvious. But literally about every other day, sometimes every day when it's a good week, I will get emails from people who go on and on for a few paragraphs saying, holy smokes, I suddenly see the world in a completely different way. I suddenly realized that all the voting and all the playing stuff inside the game of politics was not only completely pointless, but it reinforced the lie in my own head and to everybody I was, you know, to everybody in front of me watching me do political activism. So people are waking up in droves, and it is my favorite thing in the world to get emails from people. So if this happened to you, email me. I might not even respond very much, but I love to hear it when people say, holy smokes, you're right, there is no such thing as government. There can be no such thing as government or authority. We each own ourselves. Maybe we should start acting like it. And that is happening all over the place. And the beauty is, when that reaches a certain point, the solution happens by itself. To sound a little bit pompous, if everyone in this country except government and its mercenaries believed what I do about government, there wouldn't be government the next day. And it wouldn't require a revolution. It wouldn't require overthrowing them. If 300 million people just said, yeah, we're not giving you money anymore and we're not going to obey anymore, because we understand that this giant elaborate game that you did to give the appearance that you have the right to rule us, we understand it's all bogus. So you're just psychos. Now we recognize you as the sociopathic parasites you are, and we'll have nothing more to do with you. We don't feel the need to come overthrow you or vote or campaign. We're just going to ignore you. You don't matter. And when people come to this realization, they realize the only reason the crooks in DC matter is because we make them matter by imagining the authority to be real. And that's what my silly little video, The Tiny Dot, is about. When you see the difference in numbers, it becomes pretty obvious that all of their power comes from the perceptions of their victims. If the victims stop imagining an obligation to bow to this tiny little dot of liars and crooks, we're done. No revolution required, no violence required, none of that. Poof, we're done. It's over. And I think we're just charging in that direction, because I see thousands and thousands of people waking up and saying, whoa, I finally actually understand this. I've been sort of looking around the edges till now, and now I actually get it. And that doesn't go backwards. People who realize that don't next week say, nah, I believe in government again. It just kind of doesn't happen. And most of the time when I get messages from people say, wow, I finally understand what freedom really is and what self-ownership really means, that's almost always followed by, and now I'm telling other people about it. And that's something you can't stop that. You know, I won't guess an exact date, but this will spread until the cult of statism falls and is gone forever. So, to all you activists, I would beg you to take a brief break from your protest or your event or your whatever the next thing it is you're doing, to actually reconsider your own belief system and what you believe about authority and government and law and all that fun stuff. Because you may find, as thousands of people I know have already found, that your incomplete understanding of reality is leading you to waste tons of time and effort and money on something that doesn't do any good. And the good news is, if and when enough people understand the truth, it doesn't even take that much time and energy and money to actually fix this. You don't have to do anything to the ruling class. You don't have to vote it out. You don't have to overthrow it. You don't have to do anything except ignore it. And if 300 million people choose to ignore something, that's pretty darn easy to do. Well, how much effort does that take to simply not pay any attention to the parasites in Washington? But for that to happen, people have to recognize the underlying problem. And they are in droves, but I would really, really urge anybody who's out there fighting and fighting for justice, back up long enough to figure out if what you're fighting is a symptom or the actual cause, and if you might accidentally be helping the monster that you're trying to fight against.